Hi, and welcome to Peaking with Wyatt, episode 1. On this episode, I speak with Brian Wiles, founder of a podcasting production company called Autozi. We talk a little bit about building a podcast and more about what comes after. And for about 45 minutes, we talk about building a business, building a podcast brand. Talked a little bit about Ironman training and balancing athletic endeavors in business around minute 48. If you're interested in checking that out, please enjoy. Awesome. Welcome to Peaking with Wyatt Carr. Today I am going to be peaking with Brian Wiles. Looking forward to learning more about you. And just to get started, a little of your background, kind of how you got to where you are in the podcast seat. It's not lost on me that I'm talking with a podcast guy on my first podcast. I think there's going to be a ton of learnings today, and really excited to have you on.
Thanks, Wyatt. It's a pleasure to be on this side of the microphone. It's very different. If anybody who's actually listened to any of my episodes knows anything about me, one of the things that I always kind of reiterate is I'm super introverted. So it takes quite a bit of mental preparation for me to do my own show, let alone like be in the driver's seat, or the opposite, being the passenger seat, having the questions come at me. So this will be interesting.
Awesome. How did you get into it?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I was starting out and I knew that I wanted to get into the marketing space. And as part of preparing for that, I started reaching out to agency owners and just having like short conversations, like 20, 30 minutes, to be like, hey, what have you done? Like, where were the mistakes that you made? What would you do differently? Like if you had to start over from nothing. And then I had kind of this epiphany that, well, I should publish these conversations, right? Turn that into the podcast. Meeting with business owners, having conversations about how they got started, where things got wrong, how they right-sized it, got everything back on track. So that was kind of the impetus to start the podcast. And then I had another epiphany that like, I'm actually really good at this thing. I like podcasting. I like talking to people, building these connections, helping them, fulfill this thing that they want to do in their business. They're just not sure how to take the steps to get started. So I took it a step further, and right now what I'm doing is I offer kind of a done-for-you production service that my team comes in, we do the production, we do the editing, we can line up guests. So basically the host, like yourself, would just have to show up to the show, ask your questions, and we would take over from there, take care of everything, do all the long form, short form content, any sort of written content you wanted based off the conversation.
Yeah, that's brilliant. The podcast market, I started looking into it because I'm starting a podcast. And I remember when the pandemic started, podcasts were huge. I remember a JRE episode, I listened to a lot of podcasts, JRE included, and he had looked into the numbers and he was just shocked. He's like, there's 2 million active podcasts right now. And I looked into what's active now, and it's 700,000. And so a lot of people fizzled out. It seems like there's still a huge number. 700 is a lot, 700,000. And, maybe people run out of things to talk about. You lose your passion. You think about what else you want to do. But I think there's a unique place for business owners or business development people trying to meet others, the opportunity to share stories and get the reach out. It's so hard when you're starting a business to get people to know about your brand. It's like nobody knows about you unless you're out there and you're meeting people, and otherwise it's just you're on your own. And I imagine you have experienced some of that building a business yourself. How did you get to the point where you decided you wanted to build something yourself? Like, how did you have the courage to take that jump? I think that's a lot of things that's something a lot of people think about in the corporate world. People kind of get into that rut, or the mortgage, the family, the risk tolerance, and you can just do things. It's one of my favorite quotes to come out of tech in the last couple of years, and you obviously have done that. How did you get there?
Yeah. So I was working with a multinational major marketing organization on like the kind of the tail end of my corporate career. I'd been through like a lot of other positions. I've worked as like a project manager doing like implementation. I've done like the customer success side. So like being doing the marketing piece really I thought filled out kind of my resume, if you would, for becoming an entrepreneur. It's something that I had always wanted to do. Like that was kind of like my childhood dream was to run my own business. And I've done things on and off since I was like 18 years old. But really, what kind of pushed me in this direction was two things. One, when the pandemic hit, I went back to school and got my MBA. So that way I felt from a execution side was as prepared as possible to be able to be successful. And then the other thing happened is that my company that I was working for did a huge round of layoffs, and unfortunately like I was a part of that. And I had a conversation with my wife after filling out, 500 or 600 applications. Like, this is super time consuming. Should I put this much effort into building something that I'm not passionate about, or focus that on building something for us, for me, for my legacy? And she's like, well, let's talk about the numbers. Let's figure out what we can do. And ultimately we decided that we could try to make this work, and we have so far.
Does she work as well?
She does. Yeah. She's also in marketing. She does something that's way more complicated than anything that I've ever done.
Yeah, having a wife that is also working is a very comforting support system, perhaps. And my wife works upstairs, so I'm not completely alone. It is nice to have lunch with somebody and chat with somebody here, throughout the day. If she worked somewhere else, or like on site, this would be way harder for me. And that was another big appeal of a podcast, actually talking to way more people throughout the day, as opposed to the doldrums of just doing the work. I think this mixes both. You're obviously working still, you're talking to people that are relevant to your business and building the business, but you also just are having a chat to some extent. I did want to ask something about the MBA. I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about MBAs. I saw that you concentrated in entrepreneurship, which is almost anti-MBA, but there's also obviously a lot to learn in educational environment about things that you probably could learn on the job, but also things that you learn much earlier with the degree as opposed to much later with the company if things go well. What are some takeaways from the degree that you didn't know going in?
There was a couple of classes that stuck with me for the long term. One was I had a class that was essentially a TED Talk every single week of the who's who of the business owners here in like the Denver metro area. Every one of them is doing more than 10 mil ARR. And they would kind of like come prepared to answer questions, talk about what they did, kind of, another reason why I was like set on having these conversations with the podcast, at least on my show, kind of helped me formulate what I wanted to say, how I wanted to say it, and who I wanted to target. But the other thing that I think that I got from that is that understanding like the business finance piece of it from like their perspective, if I were to ever raise capital, how to do it, what sort of mechanisms are available to me, how I need to protect certain assets of the organization, how I need to protect certain percentages of my ownership of the organization. So things like that like were super beneficial, and then other things were not.
Yeah. it's the kind of the typical answer from most MBAs. I think almost all the value comes from people you meet and the network you're building. I just had a buddy from Australia. He's working in Sydney. He got his company paid for an MBA in Columbia, and that was kind of my window to visiting New York. And it was just, New York is just so cool. That's another tangent, but he just was having fun. You know, he had his MBA from Columbia, you know, big time degree in the corporate world, but he's like, yeah, I learned a little bit. But he's also a consultant, and you know, consultants don't really do anything either. So
I would argue with you
opinions.
there. Like I've also worked in the consultancy realm, and we did a ton of work. We charge you a lot for it, and it doesn't look like a lot on paper, but it is a lot of work. We do a lot of different people's jobs very well, very quickly.
Yeah, I kid. Obviously, I like the memes. Obviously, it's popular to, you know, hate on consultants, but the memes of, you know, charging $3 million to fire half the company, it's like, have something the CEOs can blame the layoffs on. It mostly humor. I actually didn't have any bad interactions with consultants, just private equity. We got acquired by private equity in my last company, and immediately the company changed. And it's like, okay, this is a different environment, and that's kind of when I left. So in terms of starting a podcast or running a podcast, or maybe just running a podcast, what do you think, or what do you see as most common mistakes made early on by the hosts?
I think not necessarily taking the time to plan what the success metrics of your show look like, right? For me, it isn't necessarily about the number of views or downloads or whatever that I'm seeing on the show, but being able to kind of use that to connect to other people, or use that for the ability to prospect or help other people realize that, like, this is a great mechanism for you to become a thought leader in your space. So there's like 4 types of podcasts that businesses are using right now. It's thought leadership. It is prospecting, which I had mentioned. It is executive branding. So like making the executives more prevalent as their own separate brand. And there's one more that escapes me right now, but I'm sure I've made a video or written content on it.
Yeah, I'll come back to you. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the thought. I consider myself a thought leader. I think there is a lot of value in that type of content on LinkedIn, just showing up on people's feeds often, you know, just repeatability. It's like cold emails, but they can't block it, or they can, but it's like more valuable information. Hopefully they start to see you as someone that they would reach out to if you know, you are solving a problem they might need in the future. And I see that a lot, and it's worked on me. And so, you know, if it's working on me, it's working on other people. And I definitely see the value there. Prospecting is a huge aspect of why I'm doing this as well. Just meeting business leaders, meeting people that are building product. I hire people. This is what I do. I recruit. And sales is really hard, and there's a lot of staffing agencies out there, and I'm in the most technical industry, or most competitive industry, tech, and it's hard to get in front of people. And if I'm doing this and offering value of like pushing their product out there, pushing their company out there, and, you know, uploading 6 pieces of content with their branding, that's value. You know, it's like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's a win-win. And then what was your third one? I related to that one as well.
Executive branding, prospecting, and thought leadership.
Executive branding, yeah. That one, I guess I don't relate to it as well. I don't consider myself an executive yet. You need a bunch of reports maybe to qualify for that. But definitely see that in the future. And I think that would be definitely where your services are most useful, where someone doesn't have the time. You know, they just want to have the conversation, and it works out. How has that been for you? Prospecting, finding clients, sales is kind of the hardest part of the business. Some people would argue that, but I will argue for it.
Yeah, I mean, right, this is one of those instances where, like, what I do to attract people to work with is right in line with my business, right? I'm not doing anything abnormal. I shoot 1-2 podcasts a day, and then try to publish them within 72 hours. So like just being on top of it, quick turnaround, just being present, being polite, being courteous of somebody else's time. But yeah, like having conversations, trying to understand what it is that they're looking to do, and then helping them kind of formulate a plan to be like, hey, this is what I do for other businesses. This is how I could help you, right? It always starts with understanding kind of their vision for their overall organization, understanding if they have like a marketing team already, or if like me and my team have to step in as that. Then we go into a planning session, talk about what their podcast approach is, right? We spend about 45 minutes discussing that, figuring out a plan, figuring out who we should be reaching out to have those guests lined up on their show. And then we start rolling. Usually we shoot 2 to 3 episodes before we start publishing. That way there's a little bit of a backlog and there's not like this delay between the first and the second episode, or the first or the second and the third. That way, like, we can put it on a cadence, making sure that everything is scheduled properly and coming out on a regular schedule really helps with engagement.
Is that proven metric? That's like best practice without question.
Yeah. So typically interview style podcasts release weekly perform the best.
Once a week.
Unless you're looking at a higher production level, and then it's every other week.
And what do you mean higher production level?
So like think of like Joe Rogan as having a higher production level. Does that make sense? Like he's got a big studio and a bunch of people who help produce the show for him.
He's
like
only got one person
that you see.
No, he says that on a lot of episodes, just him and Jamie. Although, I think he says that. I think he does say that. There might be a booker, but I think he says it's just the two of them. The Flagrant podcast, I don't know if you know that one. I'm a big comedian fan. There's all these different comedic podcasts. Comedians tend to tell the truth.
Yeah, two bears, one cave. That's the one that I think is pretty funny with Bert Kreischer and Steve Segura.
Tom Segura.
Tom Segura, yeah.
Yeah, I do like them. I don't watch their podcast too often, but I do like when they come on other ones. I watch Kill Tony a lot.
Oh yeah, Kill Tony is pretty funny.
So good. My wife likes the show. It's just like so unexpected. She started liking the show. I'm like, wow, I can actually watch something with you, because she likes this, reality TV, and I just cannot sit through reality TV. And so she likes Kill Tony. I'm like, oh my God, this is the best. And so we watch half on Monday night and then half on Tuesday night. And we watch every single episode. It's like our little ritual.
Nice.
That's a good little night. In terms of back to starting the podcast or running a podcast, you talked about success metrics, and I'm kind of curious, what are your success metrics for your personal podcast?
So mine are more geared towards engagement with the brand. So the way that I publish all of my episodes, I publish it back to my website. So instead of driving people to watch it on YouTube, I embed that YouTube link into my website. So it improves SEO, it improves engagement through the site. Like that way people can, if they choose to, click around and find out more about what it is that I'm doing. So you like using it that way, it's building more brand awareness than making sure that I'm getting a bunch of downloads. I mean, it has steadily grown as I have published more and more and more episodes. But yeah, I like downloads or subscribers in this day and age is so infrequent, right? Like I watch so much YouTube, like find out like more and more things about something I didn't know, like when it comes to website development or something AI or this, that, or the other thing that I'm just trying to learn a little bit more about, like I'll go to YouTube, and it's very infrequent that I subscribe to their channel. So
Yep.
I don't think the subscription metric is necessarily the one to chase anymore. Views are sometimes out of your control, especially when you're on like YouTube Shorts or on TikTok, because it's dictated by the algorithm and how other people are interacting with the content that you're putting out. So it's, you know, it platform to platform, it really kind of changes what I would consider a show success. But driving the traffic back to the site, having people gain more awareness of what it is that I do is kind of where I am right now and what it is that I'm trying to push.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I don't expect to get subscribers, or I don't really expect people to listen through every episode. I think, podcasts take a lot of time and a lot of content for LinkedIn to, the business audience for at least these business conversations is going to be 20 seconds, 40 seconds, maybe 60 if you have something really good. So I think my expectation or success metric, I think initially will be kind of the reach of the little clips I post. And I think I need to figure out what the cadence would be best for that. I think if you post once a week, you're like you get 4 times more viewership on your posts than if you post sparingly. But I don't know about twice a week
From
or 3 times a week.
LinkedIn, what I would suggest is like 3 to 5 times a week. And it doesn't have to always be shorts. Sometimes it can be written content, but you need to be posting on there, to be considered like a thought leader, or really start establishing yourself as a brand, or having people be more aware of your face and what it is that you're doing. At least 3 times a week.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal. And I think the guy that I'm working with to do revenue operations, he gets about 6 to 8 clips out of each podcast, and he'll queue those up. How do you feel about cross-platform? Do you upgrade shorts to YouTube and TikTok and LinkedIn and X? Like how many platforms are you sending stuff out to?
So I was watching, I like TikTok, right? Like I started documenting my journey on TikTok when I started last year. And, if it really does go away in a week, I'm going to be super sad. So
Is
with
that a
that said,
possibility?
yes. The extension that was signed by the government was only for like 70 days. And I think that runs out at the end of the month.
And it was the courts that decided that too, right? They verify or like signed off on the legislative. Yeah, we'll see what Trump does. He likes money, so if they if they put up, I think he's going to try to save it.
But the good thing about TikTok is the algorithm doesn't necessarily punish you for testing like 2 of the exact same pieces of content. So like I could take a clip from this and just cut off 2 or 3 words on one side and 2 or 3 words on the other and test them back to back. I could put them out minutes apart, and the algorithm doesn't punish me for that. So I could test really quickly on TikTok and then use that clip that it performed better on other platforms to get engagement.
Good old-fashioned A/B test.
Yes, 100%. So like that's one of the, I think that was Dan Martell, who someone had asked him about why he did that, and I was like, well, that's damn near brilliant. Okay, cool. I'm going to steal that.
The knowledge sharing in this day and age there's just nothing that ever came close to this. It is wild how quickly you can learn everything there is to know about a topic, and I think that's only going to increase. So what are the 2 versions? One like with the script and one with a transition, or what are the different versions
No,
of A/B test?
it really could just be you could run pretty much the same exact 2 clips, but maybe have one that doesn't have like the transition into the like whatever the topic is, and then have the other one have that transition. So like someone asking the question and then the answer, and then versus just having the answer.
So
and see which one. And
if you're sending it or publishing it, one would be you asking the question and then the guest responding, and then the other would just be the guest responding.
yep,
And then
could be
the
that
text,
simple.
the caption will maybe prompt the question, and they can see what the question was or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked into TikTok Creator yesterday. I downloaded TikTok when it came out, or maybe when it was getting popular in the U.S. I don't remember, maybe like 2020 or 21. And I had it for like 54 seconds. And I'm like, this is not going to be good for me. I deleted it. I haven't had it since. But in terms of sharing stuff, my sister, she's a tattoo artist, and she'll get 1 million views on something. And obviously tattooing is, pretty fun to watch. It's got the ASMR aspect of it. And she's like incredibly talented. So she warrants that level of activity, but the views are just crazy. She'll get thousands of views, hundreds of thousands of views, and then she'll get quite a few bookings. And she does need a better booker, but I think I need to be on every platform. I think it's just nonsensical to not be, right?
Right. Like it's so easy to cross post. Like you can take the same exact content and cross post it, right? I've tested multiple scripts for platform specific, whatever they think the algorithm was going to perform best, and sometimes it didn't, and sometimes it does. Like sometimes it's super hit or miss. So like now it's okay, I'll may test it on TikTok, A, B, which one performs better. Okay, B was better here. That's the one I'm going to push out next week across all platforms to just get the engagement up on whatever that clip was. And then sometimes it's organic. Like I did a podcast with an agency owner a couple of weeks ago, and like one of the big things that kind of came out of that is I asked him to like explain to me like I'm a 5-year-old SEO, and he was like, well, SEO is like real estate, and that clip right there blew up. Like that was, I got really good engagement on my side. He got really good engagement on his side, on multiple platforms. I thought that was just kind of a brilliant analogy.
That is a good analogy. And then what is the level, like how many hours do you think you're putting into like your personal production and sending things out? Like how much time is this taking now that you've obviously kind of got it down to potentially somewhere near a science? What level of investment are you putting in time-wise? And not including the podcast shoots themselves.
Yeah, not including the shoots. Are we talking just like start to finish for me to do an episode? Or are we talking like everything for just like brand building?
What else would be included in brand building?
So I do a lot of just original content away from the podcast itself around either thought leadership or how to run a podcast, thought leadership on podcasting, which sounds counterintuitive, but like here's how to set up a podcast to be successful if you're looking to use it for prospecting. If you're looking to use it for thought leadership, here are the things that you need to consider when you're editing it, when you're promoting it. Here's the best practices for promoting it. So I do a lot of like content that it's just me talking to a camera, and then I put in B-roll to support my business. And then I can turn all of those videos into written content through the transcripts and create blog posts and other, newsletters and other written content based off of whatever I was saying to the camera.
So do you consider yourself a content creator?
No.
No.
I mean, I guess, yes, I would have to. But like, do I... That's not what I'm going to put on my business card.
Yeah, no. That's production.
But I think that as a business owner, you have to get relentless about self-promotion and put yourself out there in ways that you wouldn't normally. So me creating content, whether good, bad, or otherwise, like me putting in the reps to help myself get better at doing it, helps everybody else.
Yeah.
I try to put out as much educational content as I possibly can because for me, like I am always willing to help somebody who is in a situation where I was a couple of years ago, or when I was like just coming out of school, not really knowing where I wanted to be in life, but like knowing that I wanted to run my own business. So I'm always willing to help out, and that's why I do a lot of educational based content.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what gets the most views too. Like people want to see that. And I think a lot of the people that will see that are very interested in learning about it, but also aren't that interested in doing it themselves always. And a lot of these people that might be starting a podcast want it to just happen. They're like, oh, this guy can do it for me, but they're already in the vein of trying to figure out what it takes to get started, and there you are. And so
Exactly.
I saw that work with staffing company coach as well. I started, or my partner and I started a staffing company, and I started looking up staffing company YouTube videos. Like, what's the best strategy to get started, land your first clients? What can you do to differentiate yourself? And about a month later, I found myself on a sales call with that guy. And I was getting a pitch on, why he would be the best fit for us. And it works. I didn't take a pitch with any other staffing coaches, and I'm sure there's a lot out there, and he did the educational content. I think some people will take it as like giving away the keys to the castle, or like, industry secrets or stuff, but that's kind of nonsense to some extent. There's enough bread for everyone. There's not a starvation mentality in the United States, at least, and there's enough for everyone. In terms of, you said you have I guess I kind of want to go back to the question of time invested in each podcast. So you record an hour podcast. How many minutes or hours are you putting into just getting all the content out to people? What's a good number to shoot for, perhaps, if someone's doing it themselves?
Yeah, if someone's
i.e.
doing it themselves, say you have an hour's worth of video content, that's going to take you time and a half at least to edit. So an hour is going to take you at least 90 minutes. And that's with, efficiencies. It'll probably be closer to 2.5 for your first couple. Yeah. And then I've got a lot of other things in the background that I can leverage with regards to creating transcript files, creating closed captioning for YouTube, just a lot of little things that really kind of add up over time. But like going back to, I think earlier in the conversation, you had mentioned cold email. Like cold email works. It worked on me, right? You reached out to me in a cold email, inviting me onto the show. Like people are willing to talk about themselves, what it is that they're doing, as long as you've positioned yourself as it being mutually beneficial.
Yeah, that's a huge little bit to
But
add
like
there.
I also help with my clients establish that messaging on here's the angle to take when we're doing these reach outs if you're wanting to book like these types of people on your show.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to note. I'm doing a few different campaigns, and the podcast method is by far the most successful. It's like a 5 to 10x in terms of booking a meeting. And a podcast is kind of a meeting. It's a conversation. It is mutually beneficial, but I'm as interested in your services right now than, you're a one-man company. I don't know if there's any interest in what I do, but this is very important for me to learn. So I was very interested in taking the call, and who knows, you might end up helping me in the production, because 2 hours per episode, that's a commitment. I definitely see this being successful with executives. Like
I mentioned, I shoot at least 5 episodes a week. for
Does it
me,
get
for my
exhausting?
podcast. I limit the number of shows that I do in a day. So I can only mentally prepare for 2 at a time. Beyond that, it's just like it's too much. It's
Yeah.
too much for me. It's too much prep. It's too much post prod work. It's just too much. Regardless of who I've got helping me do the other pieces, like it's just being on camera, being on for that long is just too much.
It is different. Like I do so many video calls. I've done so many team meetings. I've stood in front of so many people. But you add the recording button and it changes things. You're in a different headspace, and I kind of need to just continually push that out. It's just be yourself, do your thing. Lower expectations is no big deal. There's obviously post production that you can fix anything that
Exactly.
went terribly, but the red dot, it makes a difference. I've been listening. Oh, go ahead.
Listening to your voice, like once you get past listening to your voice on a regular basis, you're golden. Like hearing myself talk as much as I do, now feel like I'm like a college professor and just can stand up and give a lecture on anything, regardless of what the topic is. Yeah.
I need you to say that again. That's like
What? Just
when you get past listening, you're like, I am so bad at that. My wife was listening to my intro yesterday, and it's just so cringe. I hate it. I don't like it at all. I think that's going to be a process.
it is. It's a process, right? I think I did probably 10 episodes before I was able to like listen to my own voice and feel comfortable with how I sounded to myself, and then been like, okay, I need to change this when it comes to my delivery. Right? Then I'm starting to talk about how I'm speaking, my cadence, how long my pauses are. Like, I am terrible with the millennial pause. I will pause and then figure out what I was going to say. Like, I do that all the time. And you'll have a great time looking at the editing for this. You'll see a bunch of dots. That's the pause time.
Yeah, they want to eliminate those, or sometimes they'll like recommend the AI engine will say eliminate these breaks and ums and uhs. I do have a tendency to say or a little more often than I like. It's not terrible, but I also say like a little too much. I got a little valley girl in me.
It's really common. Mine is, 100%, totally agree. But it's great transitions. Like if you're talking to me about something, or if I've asked you a question and I'm trying to interject and get back into the conversation, that's an easy way to do it.
I think that the second and third are okay. Can get you in trouble. Some people say that a lot, and it just immediately stands out. I had a former boss that would drop that. We would count it in meetings. Like we'd have a counter. He never found out about it. I wonder if he'll ever find out about it. He's going to listen to this, and maybe he'll know if it's him or not.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
I edited a show for a client of mine recently, and he was on with his guest, and she continued to say the same phrase over and over again that I looked up how many times it popped up, and it popped up well over 100 times in less than 30 minutes.
Oh. At what point? Is there a point where you would like give them feedback?
I tried to eliminate as much of it as I could, just being a good editor and trying to make the conversation sound as natural as possible without taking away their tone or attitude towards the conversation.
Yeah, you got to kind of make each one a decision to eliminate, because if their tone changes, then it's like an obvious break. My goal would be to not have breaks, but for the shorts, I mean, that's all you need is 20, 30, 40 seconds of clear audio, and it's all good. And then I don't know if anyone's watching the full audio podcast anywhere, so it's not a big deal if there's breaks or not. Are you in your business, did you build a product, or are you using a suite of products, or what does the process look for you?
Yeah, so right now I am using a commercially available suite of products, some of the ones that we are using right now. And I am planning on eventually building a product to unify all of that suite of products into one single platform to allow podcasters to shoot, edit, distribute all from the same place, as well as monetize it eventually, like monetize their shows. Because right now in the marketplace, that is on 3+ platforms that I would have to do that on. And I want to make that commercially easier for people like you and I who are interested in podcasting but don't want to have to pay for 4-5 different platforms to be able to shoot, distribute, edit in different places, if that makes sense.
How realistic is it to assume that you're going to be able to monetize your podcast?
My podcast, I don't know. That isn't necessarily my goal, but
in general, like if someone else is thinking about it,
I would say that your chances are not specific, like super high, unless what it is that your conversation is ultra specific to a niche, right? Yep. Say you're well known in like the D&D realm, and I know that this is ultra niche, but like having a name tied to it, like already being well known, helps establish your podcast as being established, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. I have I kind of want to do it as a joke, as kind of a kid, to promote products I like and just film short ads and put them in. And they're obviously not sponsored. I'm obviously not making any money, but just like, this podcast is brought to you by, and then I'll show the product and talk about why I like it, and just film fake commercials. And then if anything comes of it, fine. You probably won't, but I think it'd just be funny. I think it'd be a good joke. People are like, what? He already has sponsors?
Honestly, having your own podcast gives you an opportunity to plug your own business as the sponsor of it. So what I do with mine is that, like, I can, at the end of it, I say that now I do, that it is produced and edited by a Tozy. And that we do podcasting for businesses, and we bring, business leaders' voices to market. So that's a quick and easy thing that I put at the end, and then you can do like a mid cut of like, here's who we are. This is brought to you by so and so. But also, like in the beginning, in your intro, you can also say that this is my business focus. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of intro who you are, what it is that your organization does. So you're promoting your business on your podcast, and then you can just kind of continue to have the conversation with your guest, like as the intro. And then that kind of subconsciously puts the seed in their mind, oh, I wanted to talk to him about this thing at the end of the show.
Is your podcast typically an interview style, just learning more about the person and promoting the person, or are you often talking about podcasting?
No, so the people that I have typically on my show, my guests are typically C-suite. We talk about their, like, how their journey, like their career journey led them to founding or landing a C-suite role. And then we're talking about their industry, what makes them different in their industry, what they're doing for like community building or thought leadership. Because that's kind of like an anchor question that helps me. And like, okay, then I have an opportunity to talk to them more about this as a future endeavor with them. So having those questions in your script that are anchor questions that if you're looking to prospect with somebody is great to be able to come back to. Does that make sense?
Define anchor questions again.
Yeah, so it's a question that anchors your offering in their business.
So give an example of how you would do that. Or what
so like for me, it's like, okay, I'd say, hey, Wyatt, like, what is your business doing to create thought leadership in the space? Or what are you doing to build community around your brand?
Yep, that makes sense. And then they give an answer, and you have an opportunity to talk about.
Yep.
Yes, yes. So I think this is a worthwhile question for a potential short or something of the sort. What does someone need? What is the blueprint to starting a podcast?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The blueprint for starting a podcast is fairly simple, right? You have to really have a desire to want to be heard. You have to have an interesting point of view of what you want to talk about. And then you have to understand who you want to be talking to. So think about like one or two personas that you're literally talking to through your podcast. And that way you're trying to be specific enough that you'll connect with an audience. We're going back to like identifying a really small niche. By doing that, you'll build an audience around your show. So I think that those are some of the key items to consider when starting a podcast, is just having a unique perspective on something, wanting to be heard, and know who you're trying to talk to and talk only to them.
That is interesting, and I might get into trouble there because I have so many different types of people that I kind of want to talk to, and I think would be interesting stories to be told. I named it Peaking because it's like a triple entendre. There's like all these different meanings it could be, and kind of interested in your feedback on the name, actually. Not that it's wildly important, but maybe it is. But
I like it.
Cool.
I like the entendre, right? Peaking from like a frequency perspective, peaking because it's in Colorado and you're taking a look into other people's businesses. It totally makes sense.
Yeah, and my buddies, he kind of introduced me to the term on the third meeting. Is just like having a great time, being at just this incredible mood or doing something you really enjoy. And it kind of opens up the door for me to talk to not just business people, but I have an Ironman group that I am trying to build in Denver, or trying to connect with in Denver. I think a lot of them are connected already, but I'm joining different networking groups and training groups. And I like the idea of a triathlete / business group where it's these people are doing so much. Some of these people have kids, they're training for Ironman, and they're executives in companies. And those are impressive people. And I want to share their story. I think that story is incredibly impressive. And oftentimes they're fairly humble about it, and they're not trying to share that story too much. And then I have a lot of friends that I think would be fun to talk to, and obviously wouldn't post that content on LinkedIn. I have younger siblings, an 18-year-old. How does an 18-year-old see the world? I think that would be kind of fun content to post, but it wouldn't really work for a recurring listener who comes to the podcast for business.
And it's okay, right, to create other content that may be away from your podcast, right? I am really interested in your Ironman idea. I've done an Ironman. So
full?
Yeah, full.
Let's go.
I'm looking at the medal right now. I did Cozumel in 2011.
Incredible.
I was sub 11.
Wow. I was tracking for sub 11, and then I got the flu, and I literally was in bed for 4 days, and I lost 2 weeks of training, and now I'm tracking for like 11:28.
Well, let me know how I can help you out.
April 26th. There's not too much I can do. I have a 6-hour ride this weekend, but it's probably going to rain. And so if I have to do 6 hours on the trainer, that is going to be a next level mental strength project.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. I who would have thought? Yeah, I try not to bring that up too much. It's such a big part of your life when you're in it and you just always end up talking about it. And you know, you don't want to be the guy that only talks about one thing. So, but that's incredible. You
Yeah,
do
I
that
mean,
too.
I've done a lot of like athletic endeavors, right? I swam collegiately, and then to stay in shape after school, once I graduated from college, I got into triathlon because I had a former swim coach was like, you should totally try this. You'd be really good at it. And so I did it, and I was like, okay, I'm hooked. Like I did my first one on a mountain bike. I was terrible, but I was like, this is so much fun. And then, the gear upgrades came, and then I
Yep.
started getting better and better and better. Did a bunch of halves, and I think the year that I did the full, I did three halves, like leading up to it. And it was just a fun experience. I was a part of a team right outside of the DC area that I helped coach their swim team. And it was just like it was a really fun experience because like that gave me the mentality of coaching and training others and watching them grow into something that they didn't necessarily realize they could do themselves, and it helped push me too. So now like the thing that I'm big into is weight training. So now like I'll go to the gym and just lift stupid big weights for being a tiny little guy.
I love it.
So yeah, like that's where I am now with like being able to push my body and continue to push myself, because it's like some days you have that mind body connection and other days you just don't, and you still show up and do it. It's kind of like owning a business. Like some days you have that mind body connection and you're just really pushing it, everything feels on, and other days you're just like, well, I got my stuff done, but I don't feel good about anything.
Yeah, it's really paired well with this starting a business, because you don't always see progress in the beginning of starting a business, and training for something like this, you do see progress. And so it's little wins in different aspects of your life that keep you going in the harder aspects of it, especially starting a business where you might not see success for a long time. You might not see a paycheck for quite a bit of time in between each, so there's it's been a really good pairing, aside from the time commitment I have done with the Denver weather of, had to do midday runs, because if you wait till night, it's going to be, 15 degrees outside. And so I've done a couple midday runs, cheated on the work schedule a bit, but that's part of the benefit of doing your own thing. You're free to try. I was powerlifting for about 12 years probably, and less serious until the last maybe 5 to 6. And I got pretty strong. I'm pretty happy with what I put up. And then I got married, and my wife took me to Australia for a part of our honeymoon, and we stayed with her childhood friend. And I always had this interest in Ironman in college. I said I was going to do one by the time I graduated, and then that didn't happen. I said, okay, I'm going to do it by the time I turn 25, and that didn't happen. And I said, okay, I'll do it by the time I'm 30. And I'm sleeping at this person's house. They hosted us. And I wake up, it's vacation. We're on vacation, honeymoon. And I wake up at like 8 o'clock maybe. And she walks in the door, and she had just run a half marathon. I'm like, wow, that's impressive. It's inspirational. And she goes, yeah, we're training. She's a big Ironman. She's done like, I think 5 or 6. And she went to Kona this last year, and she said that was going to be her last one. And she got more on the schedule. And she said, I don't think you could do it, or something like that. I was like, okay, this is done. So I'm like 225 pounds powerlifting. And then I started training at 5 months, and I dropped 40 pounds. I'm all the way down to 185 by the time of the race. And that was just a half. And then I didn't like being that small. So I started powerlifting again, got all the way back to 220 in about a year. And then now I'm all the way back down to 190 again, training for the full. I kind of got tired. Powerlifting is, you really have to stay on a schedule of like number chasing. It just, I got a little bored. I mean, it's probably different for everyone, but it is fun. It's so fun to be strong. I really like that feeling. I think it's a better feeling than being good at endurance in terms of like day to day.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the quote that comes to mind is from what is that show, Eastbound and Down, where it's like, oh, you're the best at exercising,
Yeah. That's
which is
CrossFit.
fine, right?
That's
Like
CrossFit.
I'm okay with that. But yeah, when the reason I got into powerlifting is that when my son was born, he turns 2 this week. So when he was born, like, I was eating everything, not in any sort of shape, just like whatever. And we were out with friends, and I was like, I want to put on vanity muscles, and like all the guys there were like, haha, yeah, right. Like, okay, done deal. We're doing it.
Yeah, if you have the discipline to do an Ironman, the discipline to lift is definitely easier. It's much shorter, much less painful, and uh, yeah, I mean, it's just easier. It's potentially more fun. The training is so hard in Ironman. I think the races are incredibly fun, but the training is just tough. It is.
The races are blast. It's
Yeah, kind of just the
Don't forget
celebration
to
of the.
just spend some time to look around. Like,
Yeah.
those people are out there to support you, and that's like probably one of the coolest things.
It's such a supportive community. Literally everyone I've met. I was just in Australia last week, and I needed to do a swim and a bike, and so I rented a bike. They call it hire. You hire a bike. And I looked on Facebook group for the cycling crew, and there it was, and they were doing a bike, and I jump in, and they're just like so welcoming, and invite me to breakfast after, talk about the races, talk about their training, and I was swimming with them the next day. Just like such a nice group of people, and I'm just starting to connect with the Denver group too. Of course, I picked the worst season to start training, so you can't do too much outside. But I am also doing the triple bypass, and I'm doing the Leadville mountain bike 100,
Nice.
which 105. And I don't own a mountain bike, so
How
gonna need
tall
to
are you?
train.
I've got some friends.
I'm tall. I'm like 6'3.5".
Yeah,
I think
let's talk offline. I've got some friends that could help you out.
absolutely, yeah. I'm also, if your offer stands on anything you can do to help, I'm a decent swimmer. I'm like a 140 per 100, but I can sprint about 115. I think there is a gap in my swimming. I almost did the Colorado school, the master's training, but it was like
Yeah.
$700. This is like a little more than it, my expenses are just so high for this whole race.
Yeah, I can help you out for super cheap. Like, I'm very good at being able to identify like inefficiencies in people's stroke. Like, I was a collegiate swimmer, like I mentioned,
Yeah.
and I coached for quite a long time. And it's still something that I'm passionate about. Like one of my early business ideas was, oh well, I'll help people like analyze people's swim stroke. And like I bought a GoPro camera to be able to do like underwater recordings, and I was like, how do I ship this out and then like take videos of people and review it and have it not be creepy? Was kind of the thing. It was like, okay, I'm good at this. I can really help these people, but it is a little bit like had a creep factor to it. So I was like, I'm gonna pump the brakes on this and just kind of work locally with people that I know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, recording in a pool is a little questionable.
Right.
I wish we had more 50-yard pools here. I did a 50-meter pool in Australia. It's so much better than 25. Man, it's just back and forth and back and forth. But I'm much better in a straightaway than I am on the turn, and so that gives me some confidence. I don't know how to do the flip turn. I've never learned that, so I've done thousands and thousands of laps with no flip turn.
That's flip turn's easy. Open water swimming is much more challenging.
I like it, especially in a wetsuit. You're just flying.
Oh yeah.
I had no experience swimming in a wetsuit before my race, and we were in salt water too. And I swam like 6 minutes faster than my expected time. So the whole way I'm like weaving through people, which is not really what you want to be doing. But it was a good time. Let's finish up with a few, maybe one or two questions just around kind of what you're doing, how people can learn your story.
Sure.
What are your biggest takeaways from your own experience building a company specifically?
Biggest takeaways. One would have to be hire or partner with someone who helps you be more rounded in the organization. So like if you're not strong at sales, hire or partner with someone who is great at selling what you bring to market, because learning on the job, like literally on the job, is not necessarily the best thing for you to do. Expect that first sale to take much longer than you read on Reddit or see on the internet. It is a grind to get there. Expect whatever it is that you're building to take at least 25% longer than you hoped it would, and cost about 50% more than you wanted it to.
Good lessons. I would agree with all of that. In terms of building, you're talking about like a product,
team,
yep,
community, any of it. I think that it all kind of applies.
Well, if you're trying to build a team fast, use Wyatt Carr with the page group, and you will hit those goals.
Oh, man. Set that one up for you to knock out of the park.
You really did. I appreciate that. If anyone makes it to 1 hour into the episode, what's one thing you wish more people knew about your company? Is Atozi?
Yeah, Atozi.
Atozi. I'll clip that out.
Either one is correct.
Again.
Atozi, Odyssey. That anybody can start and manage a podcast, right? Like it does take time and effort if you're doing it on your own. But if you were to partner with us, we make it as easy as possible, where you just show up, have the conversation as the host, and my team takes all the raw materials, edits, distributes, anything you want. We can partner with your marketing teams to make sure that everything is on brand for you and it looks great.
And how can someone find you?
Yep. I can be found at atozy.co. That is AUTOZY.co. Is the best way. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me on YouTube. I'm everywhere. Look for this face that shouldn't be in HD but is. I'm everywhere.
Not on my channel. Not yet. Still on the free trial. They don't give you 4K yet, but I am going to upgrade. Do you play the ukulele, or is that nice for show?
I do play the ukulele. That actually, it matches. I have a Telecaster right here that looks exactly the same. So nice. I bought that for my toddler son. I should be better at this point thing.
Can you send us out on a quick tune?
I don't think it's in tune, but yeah, I'll record you something and I'll send it over.
Oh, good deal. I have a nice alto sax in the case here that hasn't been used in like 8 months. It's just like, it's another one of those goals that I just keep putting off. I played it in junior high, but just so sparingly since. And it would be so cool to be good at an instrument, but there are no shortcuts to learning an instrument. It is so hard.
Anything in life, right? There's no real shortcuts to get there. Like, it takes practice. It takes repetitions. It's like this. In order to be good at interviewing and be good at active listening, it takes repetitions. It just takes time. Some people have it and some people don't. Like I had mentioned before, I'm super introverted, but I also have a tad bit of ADHD, which is why I asked for the questions beforehand to kind of keep me on track, and I don't even know where the questions are.
I don't think I asked many of the questions I sent over. That leads me to potentially a closing. Active feedback. How did I do? What do you think? How can I improve from a expert in the podcasting world?
Do you want this to be recorded or not?
Yeah, let's put it out there.
Okay, yeah. For being one of your early shows, I think this was great. I would put a little bit more structure to it, especially with someone like myself who kind of goes off topic. It's okay to bring me back on course. just do it respectfully. Be like, okay, hey, yep, heard. Let's get back on topic. And that's why like I keep a list of questions. That way we can always go back to those questions, guide the conversation back to where it needs to be. It's righting a ship. I love just organic conversations too. It's fun, but it doesn't necessarily tell the story or deliver the pieces that you need out of the show.
As a balance. Yeah, I think I still haven't decided what balance I want there, because I really appreciate the free-flowing conversation, but then the purpose of business development and content development might not be fulfilled. So it's an enjoyment factor versus the actual business
Do you
purpose.
like beer?
I love beer. I
Okay.
don't drink too much. I haven't drank too much recently with training.
Training
but
for the Ironman.
Yeah, big beer guy.
Because I had an idea for another podcast outside of the one that I have. I want it to be with a regular co-host who has a different perspective on business than myself. That we enjoy beer and we talk about business. And it can just be an organic conversation. We talk about the beer that we're drinking. We talk about like the things that cropped up in the week and just have it kind of be a regular thing. Like, I think you would be a fun person to do that with, mostly because you're also local. We could take the show on the road and like shoot from an actual brewery.
That would be fun. Yeah, I'm interested. That would be pretty funny. I'm not like an aficionado by any means. I've kind of gone back and forth on IPAs, whether or not I like them. I lived in Munich for a year, so very into
Some of the best beers in the
lagers.
world.
Yeah, it's just incredibly lucky to be there for beer. And I also don't hate bad beer. I'm okay with cheap Coors Light. You know, it's the local beer here. It's way better here than it is in California. I can tell you that. Yeah, that sounds fun. We can pilot it. You know, see how it goes.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate your time, Brian. It was great to meet you. Looking forward to future correspondence. Any last things for the 100 million people still listening to the show?
You've been great, Wyatt. I really appreciate you having me on the show today. I can't wait to see how the engagement or clips come out from the show. If you want to do a reshoot, we can do that too.
It's your way of saying the clips are not going to happen on this one. You know,
The clips will happen. I don't know if we'll deliver the message that you're looking for or me, but they'll be
looking
there.
for reps early. You can't expect to be perfect in the beginning. I have
Yep,
no
I'm with you.
expectation there. So these are good reps. Awesome. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.